Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of Hilaal Live. I'm your host, Luqmaan Shadrach. Welcome to a brand new edition, a brand new week of Hilaal Live, and we start off with Mental Health Mondays, as we normally do. And today is a very important and I think a topic that affects not those that are writing exams, but also the extended family. Parents, teachers, and we're talking about exam stress. And back in studio, I'd like to welcome clinical psychologist, Brother Rafiq Lockhat. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. I'm delighted to be back here again.
Thank you so much for affording me your time, and very excited. And first of all, congratulations on your award that you received in Johannesburg. You're back after a week-long trip, and I think it's an accolade that just highlights your work in the industry. So congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Exam stress. I think you rolling your eyes. So can you imagine the pupil that's going to write, the kiddos, the parents, the teachers, everybody, gets excited at this time of the year as well, and with good measure, because there's a lot of pressure been put on everybody as well. But if we look at and we break it down, let's start with the anxiety that builds up when it comes to exam stress. Talk to us about that.
I think it's normal to be anxious about writing an exam. I think anything where there's a test, learner's license, school exam, whatever, a show like this, a certain amount of anxiety is now normal.
Right.
Okay? You worry about getting it right. But then it kind of slips into too much anxiety. And then you get what's called exam anxiety. And I often see young people who suffer from exam anxiety. These are students who've worked really hard, but on the day of the exam, in the exam, they go blank.
Sure.
Right. And this is a common thing that lots of people know. And people often say, but why? I knew my stuff. It's because you're so wired that you go sit in the exam and there's just one word you don't recognize, and it immediately trips the alarm system in your brain, the false alarm. And there's a part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex, that's your thinking brain, and then there's the other part, or the emergency brain. And the emergency brain gets tripped because it doesn't recognize something, just one word. And it presses the alarm inside, and what we call your limbic system then activates. So basically, there's an alarm bell gets pressed, and your adrenal glands pump, and blood pumps, and then you start to get wet under your arms, and your mouth goes dry, and then you can't think, because it's designed that way for real emergency, where you must go in that action, fight or flight.
Yes.
But in the exam room, it's not what you need. You need to remain in your prefrontal. So the more you try to gain control, the more, unfortunately, you go blank.
Yeah.
And later on, like 2 hours later, when you're done, your brain resets. Students often go, but I knew all that. And that's true, you did. But at that time, so one of the things students have to learn, and we'll talk about, is how to manage that anxiety better. So there's normal anxiety, which you should have, and then there's exam panic or exam anxiety, where you go blank. That's in the exam situation.
Right.
But then prior to that, of course, is the build-up to the exam.
Right.
I have a daughter in matric. You have kids, you know what it's like. And we'll talk about parents and what parents, because parents, I think, suffer equally.
As well, because look, as a parent, your first obligation or first attempt is to ease whatever troubles your child is having, whether they've fallen and gotten hurt, writing exams, whatever it is in life. And some parents, to a large extent, feel a bit helpless, because this is now internal, and I think in return, a child doesn't know how to maybe express themselves and what they're feeling. So the parent is all flustered, thinking, what do I do? How do I help? I want to help. Do I stay away? Do I let the child do it on their own? Are these the type of concerns that you often hear?
Often hear those concerns. What do I do? What do I not do? But then, of course, many parents just decide that they'll do their own thing anyway. And they sometimes help, and sometimes they make it worse.
Can be detrimental to large.
Can be completely detrimental. And of course, when I see teenagers, their common complaint is, they're on my case. They're just on my case all the time.
They don't understand.
They just want me to study. It's all they want is, I'm studying so hard. If I just take a break, then my mother or father's, why are you here? What are you doing here? You must be in your room studying.
Correct.
So that kind of stuff often makes it a lot harder. There's frustration on both sides. Parents think the child's not making enough effort. Child thinks the effort is not being recognized. They're under pressure. So we'll talk about that just now, tips on how to manage that. But these are and then, of course, then there's an explosion.
Yes.
And when that happens, it takes hours to reset. Parents are angry. We're paying so much for school fees. Look what you're doing. And the kids say, I'm doing the best that I can. And then conflict.
Yeah.
And you can't really study in a conflictual situation.
Yeah. Also, another aspect that is overlooked in the scholastic environment, and maybe, parents and families as well, there could be a learning disability.
Absolutely.
Where the child could have passed through so many years and then become, the learning disability has become a little more prevalent now when they've reached a certain age, and that could be a stumbling block. Have you ever, come into that situation?
I do, and my colleagues, the educational psychologists, deal with that a lot better. These days, of course, there's so many educational psychologists now. Okay, it's often easier to get diagnosed earlier.
Right.
For example, if you have diagnosable ADHD, the educational psychologist will do an assessment and will write a report to the department. You can get extra time because of your condition. So it's not that we'll help you out here. It's like a professional thing.
Yeah. So it's not something you can fake.
No, you can't fake it because the psych's reputation is on the line. So they'll do a proper assessment. They'll write to the department, and the department looks at this and will then, like based on what the psychologist says, will then give the child extra time.
Right. Right.
And, there's medications these days to help with ADHD. So it's a lot easier for an intellectual disability to get picked up earlier on and for the child to get help.
Right. Also things like dyslexia.
Yes.
That has seemed to be so common, but overlooked to a large degree because people use other coping mechanisms to get through life. And it's not just in the schooling system, it's in the workplace. There are tests, exams, moderation that you need to do. Dyslexia also, if not picked up, can cause...
It's harder not to pick it up these days.
Gotcha.
The teachers are well trained, the counselors are well trained, the ed psychs are well trained, psychologists. So it's a lot, the system's a lot better in picking these things up. Like a small thing like before, is like a child didn't have glasses.
Yeah. True.
And couldn't see.
Correct.
So, and then you think this child's not learning, but in the meantime, the child can't see. But these are like a quick eye test.
Yeah.
Child gets glasses, a whole new world opens.
Absolutely. I agree with that as well. And it's so nice because there are certain projects out there that can pick and assist because sometimes not everybody can afford, to go for an eye test. But I think part and parcel of one going to write an exam or preparing for exam is maybe low self-esteem or maybe a lack of confidence that could exacerbate the exam anxiety.
Exactly. So sometimes you have a very traumatic exam experience at some earlier point in life. Unfortunately, your brain downloads that, downloads what you were feeling at the time, and then that becomes almost like the software program. So as soon as the word exam is meant, your brain goes, wait, I know what happened before. It presses play, it brings out the old trauma, and then of course automatically you get this like anxious feeling about the exam.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to study when you're in a state of heightened anxiety.
Correct.
You need a certain amount of anxiety to kickstart you. I needed that as a student.
I just had a conversation last night with someone, and they were saying they're busy studying, they're preparing for exams, and they were like, "Oh, aren't you nervous because she was writing today?" And her mom was like, "Did you study? Are you prepared?" Typical, parents. And she was like, "Well, I tend to push myself when I leave it to the last because I cope better."
Right.
Weird thing to say, but some people use that to better prepare for an exams.
It's a common thing. Can catch you out.
True.
Because if you haven't planned properly, so we'll talk about planning just now. So if you haven't planned properly and you've left it late, it's almost like you didn't eat supper. You had a bit of supper today, a bit last night, and suddenly you got these 6 half plates, and now you're meant to eat all this food at once. You can't. Something's going to get left out.
Of course.
Then you're going to do that spotting thing that people talk about. And that could hit the jackpot, or you could get it hopelessly wrong if you spotted the wrong question. So they risk the last minute studying. So everybody has a method of studying, but some methods are not helpful.
I agree. I totally, you know, one has to be prepared these days. And let's face it, I think when I was in school last, it was a lot simpler. You need almost a PhD, degree these days just to go into grade 8, for example. It's the workload is a lot more. And as parents, we tend to struggle a little bit to try and decipher what's going on in the textbooks or the homework that gets passed. But after the break, we're going to chat about some of the causes that parents go through, the anxiety that parents go through, and also some tips and advice about how to better prepare themselves as well, inshallah. We're chatting to Brother Rafiq Lockhat, who is a clinical psychologist. Today's topic, exams stress, and especially when it comes to extended family that gets affected by the entire stressful situation of writing exams. Do join us after the break. You're watching Hilaal Live. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Hilaal Live. It's Mental Health Monday, where we chat about various conditions that can challenge or present as a challenge in various situations in life. Back in studio, clinical psychologist Rafiq Lockhat, who is explaining a bit more on how to better prepare for exams and try to alleviate some of the stress that we have during that period as well. Brother Rafiq, Jazakallah so much. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.
So before the break, we chatted about some of the anxiety one experiences during exams, but equally for those that write exams, and we're trying to be more specific about the kiddos that are preparing for, whatever year they're in, from, grade 5, 6, all the way to university, is just as much as they go through their anxiety, the parents equally go through as much anxiety as well. What happens in that situation? Why is that so prevalent these days?
Parents invest a lot in their children. It's like, not like you're expecting kind of returns, but one of the things that you do, you invest, you want your child to do well. It's a very competitive world out there. You want your child.
Absolutely.
And for many parents in South Africa, this kid could be the first one that's made it to matric. It's like very possible. When I worked at UWC, often this would be the first child in the entire generation that's graduated. So the granny, great-granny would all come to graduate. It was wonderful.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot riding on it sometimes.
It's a proud moment.
Is that parents say, I never made it,
right.
But my child will. And that's a double-edged sword, unfortunately, because then there's enormous pressure put on the child, and sometimes not planned, but the parent is really excited. My child's going to go to varsity, first one in our family history.
Yes.
And so the child feels all that kind of pressure sometimes. So there's definitely that issue. And sometimes there's an unnecessary competitive thing in the family. Or, whatever, like my child must do better than the cousin or this child. That they're all normal things that happen in families, but these are things contribute. And on the receiving end is the child or the student, who then maybe also wants to do well.
And they've also been raised to respect their adults, the adults in their lives, respect what they say, and because they know better, they've been through life, and it's that expectation as well, not to disappoint.
And schools also have expectations, right, of you. We've invested in you, we've taught you, we expect you, because you get A's, then the school gets a good reputation.
So what are the common communication lines that needs to happen prior to writing exams? I suppose there could be an assessment through the year, these conversations that needs to happen through the year so that we're on track. Give us some advice around that.
So I think a very simple thing, which unfortunately doesn't happen a lot, is expectation. Let's talk about our expectations as your parents, and you tell us your expectations as our child regarding like exams. How should we deal with this? Understand we're in a difficult situation. We want you to pass. We also need to monitor you because we know that you can be a bit lazy, or we know that you procrastinate. Because parents know their children.
Absolutely.
But then the student also gets a chance to say, well, this is what will work for me. Okay, I commit to X, Y, Z.
Right.
but this is how we'd like to handle it. And I often say to the students I used to see, put a timetable up and put that timetable on the fridge as well as in your room so that your parents can see what your time, because often they'll come in during your break time and then you're laying on the bed. Like, you're laying on the bed, you're supposed to study. And you say, but I've been studying for an hour, 2 hours, it's my break time. No, you're lying. Okay, so that kind of, but it's simple. You go check the timetable and then you go and peep in the room and then you see, no, here's the break time. And I often say, parents expect their children to study indefinitely.
Yeah.
The human brain can't do that.
And we all can't be A students.
We all can't be A students.
Just
people have different strengths, they have different things, just like we all can't be certain careers, different things. But I understand parents, they want the best, but they can sometimes make it worse. So hopefully a show like this will help them to understand that a very simple thing, sit down, make the timetable up. And I explain to parents, your child's brain can't take everything. So I often suggest 45 minutes, 15 minutes.
Right.
Okay, timetable, 45 minutes studying, 15. And then 15 minutes, you take a break. You do something else, phone a friend, watch a movie, chat, do what you want to do, and then come back and start on time. That way you build up trust. Your parent then learns to trust you because you're sticking to your timetable. And when you say my time's up, you go back and study. And then once there's trust built up, everybody calms down.
Absolutely. So let's talk about maybe some of the tips that you could advise and give off to students and both parents.
Right. So for students, I remember it was time for exams. Suddenly I had to clean my room. Didn't clean it all year, but I suddenly now want to clean my room, rearrange my wardrobe, start polishing my shoes, all the procrastinating. Don't really want to start studying. So procrastination is a big problem.
Right.
One has to recognize that. Again, planning. If you put a proper timetable up, like this is your job, because it is your job. As a student, your job is studying. Going to school, that's your full-time job. You put a timetable up with complete stuff, and of course, taking the break.
Yes.
Students don't realize that they must take a break. But not study half an hour and a 2-hour break. The other way around. 45 minutes. I recommend 45. Then it's easy to manage. 45, 15. Start that as early as possible. And you can then work systematically through your syllabus. So that'll be the one thing. Secondly, I often say to students, exercise. I know I sound like a knackpot in these shows, but exercise has been shown to help the brain. If you not for 2 hours, even just like a 10-minute exercise, like a skip, moving around, jump around, push-ups, whatever you want to do. But during your 15-minute break, you could do some exercise as well. It helps the blood flow.
Of course.
It also helps your brain get rid of all that excess adrenaline. So it's ironic that exercise, which is what students often don't do when they have no time to exercise, is the one thing that can help you study better.
Nice.
And then diet. Again, this has now been, complete people nag about diet, but it's true. As a student, when I was a university student, I ate the worst things during exam time. I had Coke and chips and chocolates, and my favorite was Royal Creams. Eat a whole box of Royal Creams. I don't know if they still have them now.
They do.
Which is all the wrong things, because at that point, your brain needs the best possible fuel, and we're giving it gunk. So I do know that lots of students take lots of coffee, they take Red Bulls. Some of these are dangerous things. To try and forcibly keep you awake, that's a bad idea, because if your brain is, if you're like this, you may sit at the desk for 1 hour, but only 10 minutes of that actually went into the brain. So that's not productive learning.
Gotcha.
You can have smart learning and you can have hard learning. Smart learning is where whatever you learn goes in. Hard learning, you sat for 1 hour, only 10 minutes went in because you were busy nodding off, or you weren't paying attention. And I often say to students, do not study on a bed. People say, why? It's comfortable. Well,
that's the reason.
Because the brain works on patterns. Now, the bed is associated with rest and sleeping. So when you lay on a bed, you confuse your brain into thinking this is relaxed time. So the brain really goes into... Also, when you go to write the exam, there's no bed.
Yes.
So if there is a table in the house or there's a desk, sit at the table and work, because then your brain understands this is work.
Absolutely, but also the lighting in your room. Or the lighting in the environment that you're studying plays a massive role as well.
Yeah, students want all this mood lighting thing. I don't know that.
That's going to put you to sleep. A couple of minutes left.
Sure.
Tips for parents, because they're equally responsible for all of this.
Tips for parents, talk to your child, have an understanding, get that timetable, and there's no misunderstandings. And understand that your child also wants to do the best they can.
Yeah. They don't want to disappoint.
They don't want to disappoint themselves.
Yes.
They don't want to fail and then be the only one not going through, be left behind. The parents can help, obviously, early on to get assessments done to check if the child does have a learning disability, if the child does have ADHD, all of these things. Parents can help like that. And screaming and shouting at the child who's trying to study is the worst possible thing we can do, because then you just get into like the mode. Child's upset, you're upset. Who can study when they are upset like that? So that has to be, really minimized. Also, parental conflict among themselves.
Correct.
During exam time, try and hold back your conflicts. Whatever they are, not related to exams, but other things, fighting at home, talking about getting divorced. I often have kids say, I must study, that they're talking about divorce every day, and my matric exam is next week. That kind of stuff.
That can really put a child into a world of,
And also for youngsters, for goodness sake, don't have any, whether you're having a secret relationship, a boy or a girlfriend, do not break up. No, I can't tell you how many over the 30 years in practice, people have a bad breakup a week before exams. That they done. They done. They can't study.
Wow.
They weeping. They crying. And sometimes the parents don't know about the relationship. But this person just can't. The person left them. So please, for goodness sake, don't break up during exams or just before. Break up after exams. No hassle. Then the problem's done. But
you've
not
got the holiday
before.
to deal with it.
Deal with it. You can try.
Gotcha.
But before exams, it's such a bad idea to have a relationship and break up. Bad idea.
I think that's why many people fail their learners. Thanks so much, Rafiq.
Pleasure.
It's been always a pleasure having you in studio, learning and experiencing your wisdom with the many years in your industry as well. Have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Well, there we go. Exam stress, and especially when it comes to kiddos and parents. I hope this was beneficial for you. If you have any questions, you're welcome to email me, luqmaan@hilaal.tv. We'll pass those questions on to Brother Rafiq Lockhat. That's all that we have for you from the Cape Town team, Sohail Barnes and myself, Luqmaan Shadrach. Have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum.